But my third color combo is perhaps my most interesting one because it definitely feels more complementary than the rest, and also it does not use an off-white on the trim. Plot twist. It's time for the triumphant return of the critically acclaimed series, Color Combos, where I provide you with 3 sets of 3 colors that coordinate with one another. In this episode, they're all by Benjamin Moore. Smash like for happy feelings, and let's get straight into it. Welcome back to the Paint People, and subscribe if you're new, because we do these painting and decorating videos 3 times a week on this channel. It's pretty cool, right? Color Combos is all about giving you ideas on how to put colors together in a cohesive manner. Although we talk a lot about paint on this channel, the color palette isn't just limited to the cans of paint you buy at the paint store. Things like your furniture, your floors, even your ceilings all play into your color palette. But with today's color combos, I'll be talking about paint specifically. And even more specific than that, I'm gonna give you a wall color, which is the paint that you would use on the walls themselves, a trim color, which accounts for mainly the baseboards, but can also apply to doors, frames, or even moldings. And then you finally have the accent color, which could be utilized as an accent wall in most cases, but can also be carried over off of the walls on things like furniture and even cabinets. So let's just jump into it. Starting things off with something cool and fresh feeling. This is a color combo centered around a pale blue color known as Sweet Bluette. Aw, how cute. This would be the wall color in this combo. And what I like about it is it's not quite a sky blue because it does feel grayed out a little bit, but that's also what helps it make it feel pretty passive as a color, and dare I say, gender neutral. But James, all paint colors are gender neutral. This is a blue that I don't think anyone would complain about having in a kid's room, for example, regardless of their gender. But it's not just for kids' rooms either. It has a light reflectance value of 77.79, and that gives it a real lightness that can come across as pretty subtle in those more open areas of your home. If you use it in a north-facing room, you'll accentuate that blue undertone a bit more. And on the other end, in the south-facing side of your home, it'll feel much more neutralized. So that's the wall color. But what about the trim color? Well, I opted for Ice Mist, which is a maybe lesser known off-white because it is somewhat on the cooler side of things compared to something like Simply White, which also has a very similar LRV. Ice Mist, to some people, may appear more green, especially online, but in person it is extremely crisp and bright, and normally has a tad of blue showing through rather than green, which helps it coordinate really well with other blues, which we conveniently have on the walls. Wow. See how this works? On the other hand, if you went with an off-white that was noticeably warmer, like White Dove, for example, then you would see that creamy warmth more prominently. And this doesn't make it a bad choice, it's just something that will be more complementary and therefore more noticeable. Ice Mist just blends right in with a lovely crispness to it. What about the accent color in this case? Well, I obviously wanted to pick something dark, but I didn't want to fully invest in blue, yet I still wanted to tie blue in some way. This is why I went with a color called Black Pepper, which I enjoy using on accent walls in bedrooms specifically, mainly because it's more of a slate gray rather than a navy blue, for example, yet it does have some blue in its undertones as well. Not unlike our trim color, we're incorporating a little bit of that coolness in the background to help settle the blue on the walls so everything is coordinating together in an adjacent, nearly monochromatic color scheme. For something a bit warmer, maybe you want a color combo that will help make your space feel a bit cozier rather than crisp and fresh. So I would start with a wall color called Spring in Aspen. Now, the real Aspen isn't necessarily known for having the warmest weather, but this color is a pretty lovely soft beige that is toned with a touch of gray as well. I would say it's more beige than grayish, and it also has a 72 LRV or so, so even though it's warm and uplifting, it has enough depth in its value, or its perceived darkness in this case, that lets its saturation be seen. Sometimes, when you go with really, really light colors, the look can be a bit washed out when there's a lot of good quality light that hits it. That's why sometimes you'll be fighting over a few off-whites, and then you put one on the wall finally, and it just kind of looks white to you. Spring and Aspen brings enough to the table where you'll see that it's a color once it's applied on the walls. The trim color to go with is one called White Opulence. Opulence! I love that word. It's essentially another really high LRV off-white, right around 89.5 out of 100 percentage points. It almost has the most subtle peachy undertone to it that helps liven it up without making it feel yellow. And you can really see this once we bring back our old friend Ice Mist and compare the two side by side. This is a really easy way to confuse yourself when you're comparing off-whites. It's much better to compare it against a pure white, but it's always fun to put two together so you can really start to see how different they are. White Opulence isn't perfectly related to Spring and Aspen because it almost brings in an orange warmth rather than a yellow beige one, but once you see the accent color, then you'll get the full picture. Because it's a combo after all. They all need to be there. So I guess I should just get on with it and show you the accent color, right? All right, it's Colonial Brick, which is coincidentally a similar shade of what you would find on red brick houses of the colonial era. And to me, what's great about it is there's more than meets the eye with it. I guess you could say it's red at its core, but it's also a little bit terracotta clay colored, a little bit brown, and even a little bit pinky. This is the color that ties the other two together. And it's because the peachiness in White Opulence will feel much more passive next to the Colonial Brick, allowing it to stand out, but will come to life a little bit next to the main color in Spring and Aspen. Overall, this color combo takes things into a different direction than the last one because it obviously leverages warmer colors, but it also gives you a bit more punch on the accent side of things. But my third color combo is perhaps my most interesting one because it definitely feels more complementary than the rest, and also it does not use an off-white on the trim. Plot twist. So starting with the wall color here, we have a fairly neutral rosy color called Wisp of Mauve. With an LRV of 61.74, this is a color for people that like gray beige, but they want some real color hue added in the form of a soft hint of rosy purple. This can also be perceived as a soft chocolatey brown undertone as well. There really is a sense of elegance with this color, mainly because it's using red rather than the much more common yellow undertone. It can really stand out as what I like to call a nearly neutral color, especially when you pair it with really crisp white trim. But like I said, we're not going for white trim in this case. Instead, I'm opting for shadow gray, purely for the drama of it all. Drama. Shadow gray is quite different from Wisp of Mauve, but it's still pretty neutral in its own right. It's gray after all. Next to Wisp of Mauve, shadow gray will feel like a dark steel gray, almost a tad green leaning in some cases, but that dramatic level of contrast on the trim will really make for an interesting look overall. There's only about a 20 LRV difference between the two, so it's not a massive jump in color value, but because their undertones are really different, you'll still have a strong sense of contrast here. Finally, the piece de resistance. The combo completing accent color takes that little bit of green that sometimes pops up in shadow gray and virtually erases it. It does that because there's a stronger green undertone in this beautiful, vibrant, warm yellow color called Rainforest Dew. Even though it has an LRV just under 76, it is rich in saturation and sort of resembles the color of eggnog a little bit. Even though it's not very green in actuality, its behavior of the abundance of yellow and some gray in it, that's what gives it the appearance of a green undertone. And specifically, when you have Rainforest Dew next to Shadow Gray, your trim color starts to look more earthy and grounded rather than cool and green. And while you have those two going at it, you bring in Wisp of Mauve, which just becomes the calming baseline of it all. Can you tell I'm really into this color combo? Let me know which combo was your favorite, and we have some more combos over here for your complete and utter enjoyment.